how to build a minimum viable product. And
Yeah,
just
have
for
it
people
pulled up.
listening, I'll put it on the screen if you're on YouTube. But like, it's essentially this. Like, let's say I want to make something for transport. Like, I want to make a car. The way you shouldn't do it, like the non-MVP way, is to kind of think about the compartments of a car, kind of like Lego blocks. And from step one, you build a wheel, and then you build the casing, and then you build like the engine, and then you try to put this all together to finally make a car. And that's kind of how normal people would think about it. But this idea of building a minimum viable product is the very first stage. If you look at the picture, it's a skateboard. It goes from skateboard to scooter to bicycle to motorcycle to car. And one thing I love about this is from version 1, you can move, because what we're about in this example is transport. Like, that should be your first version, because what if you test it and some people don't even want to move around? It turns out like no one wants to, have a transport vehicle. Like, but you spend so much time making this damn car. And so like, that's kind of the sort of idea I have when it comes to building apps and coding. I really like the idea phase, and then like making the UI for it, and then try to build an MVP out of it. And lately I've been getting a lot of help from David about just backend knowledge and stuff, so I need to like improve myself in that aspect to ultimately to scale this properly and all that. But just on that initial stage about the version 1, do you guys know Wordle? I think you know Wordle.
Yeah,
right?
Wordle.
You know that game?
For sure.
I watched a podcast on MKBHD's podcast, like Waveform, and the Wordle guy was a guest, and so I was watching that, and just because I'm just curious about how he made it and all that. And one thing I really liked is the simplicity of his game. And people like MKBHD keep asking, so if you don't know what Wordle is, it's like a word game, and I think it's like 5 letters, 5-letter word. You have to guess the name. Yeah. Guess the word. And people have these questions because the game blew up. People like MKBHD kept asking him like, oh, have you ever thought about like 6 letters or 7 letters, or like, what about this feature and that feature? And like, one thing I really liked about what Josh Wordle said was, how do you, instead of like trying to pack it with like every feature that you can think of, how do you remove every feature? Like, remove as much of it as you can, but leaving the core thing there. And I thought that was really cool, because like, even when we think about apps, and I've been thinking about this for a while now, but even this week when I was like just kind of thinking about an idea for an app, it's like you get caught up in like all these different features I want to add. Like, my core app is to connect, tutors together, for example. And then you think about like, okay, you should have a chat function, right? It needs to have a chat function. Like, and then I start to have to build a chat function, and it's like, what about a search function? And, at some point, maybe all of this stuff you want to put in, but it's a really interesting thought experiment of like, what should be the core idea and the thing that you should put in version 1.
That's so good.
And I think it's quite difficult as well, but it's an interesting, it's very interesting to think about, and I love talking about this stuff. So yeah, what's your thoughts on that? Especially because you have a lot of apps that you've made, and at some point you would have had to put that version 1, right? So yeah, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, the idea you mentioned is really inspiring. That like, how do you, like, instead of thinking of like what features to add on, like how would you, like, how can you strip as many features as possible to still have a minimal viable product? And that's I feel like that's such a good mentality. That is such a good lesson for me. Yeah, I'm like, this is it's such good education values for me. I think in a sense, it's always difficult to strip out features. That's always hard. Like, those are your app features, and you wanna, like, I guess you wanna pack in as many features as possible, because that's gonna make your app better, in a sense. However, you're always on a limited time frame. Let's say, because there's 2 mentalities in working as a software developer, right? You can be the corporate developer, where you are on a team. You might be the tech lead, or you might be just a dev, But
Mm.
the point is that you might be on an agile team. Um, the idea might be that, oh, okay, you want to have small pieces of testable code out there, and then stuff like that. But really, your company is paying for it, and your company has a schedule, and you have a runway, but you're taking your time and building the product, and then in that case, you're not maybe shooting for MVP. You're more shooting for the feature complete product, and you want to take your time, figure out your architecture, figure out your code, your code structures, figure everything out, choose the optimal scalable solution, have design docs, discussions about it, architectural reviews, stuff like that. But you ain't got no time for that for if you're if you're working as an individual dev trying to get your MVP off the ground. And in that case, you might not have the time to figure everything out. And in my experience, I initially, I had an app that I wanted to build. We got a designer. We designed a few features, and no offense to designers. When you say no offense, you're gonna offend people. But
Exactly.
but designers, they like to adding a lot of things without considering how difficult it is to implement it. And then sometimes it's a good thing, because I feel like if a programmer was designing stuff, they might be discouraged mentally, subconsciously, when they're designing for features. They might be like, oh, that's probably too hard, let me just design it a little bit differently. So you might end up making bad designs. However, designers might make big features or difficult features to implement, and ended up you might end up looking at that, you'd be like, oh, there's no way we can build that in 5 months. There's no way. You might have so many features, right? Let's say a chat and stuff. You'd be like, okay, a chat feature, how, where would I host this, or would I do WebSocket? How many users gonna be using this? Oh, there's if I use a Node.js server, then okay, I have a cap on how many WebSocket connections I have, and then do I want this to be scalable? If yes, do I want an elastic, scalable multiple node architecture where WebSockets will be channeled? Oh, should I use do I go for API gateways and then try to make you have to now consider for all that, and those considerations are not app features. Those are not. Those are the scalability concerns, right? And they have nothing to do with making your product better. For now, right? They don't contribute at all. If they do contribute, the only way they can contribute is bringing you more bugs and issues because they're more complex, right?
Right.
I'm fully supportive of what you said, of trying to strip out as many things as possible, both in both in design wise and in development wise. In design wise, obviously, you want to see on a high level what features are needed for an app, but on the development on the development side as well, because you want to look at, okay, how do I implement these features? What is the easiest, yes, most effective way to build those features that is going to sustain me for at least this amount of time with this amount of users? You want to have a sense of that, and oh, this is my budget, and what should I go for? What's the pros and cons of going? Let's say if you want to host your stuff on AWS, and let's say you have your service, and people be like, oh, I'm gonna use a Kubernetes cluster, and as a wise man once said about Kubernetes is that you don't freaking need Kubernetes. You most likely don't want to worry about that yourself, because that's time spent on not making your app better. And same things goes, same things go with front end decisions, how polished I want to make my front end app. Do I want to make every aspect right? Because sometimes you might be like, oh, let's say a date picker, such a basic thing, right? A date picker. The designer might have made you, if you're the designer, you might be like, oh, I want to have my own cool date picker. And my advice is that don't have your date picker. Just use the existing one. This is an app function, right? And not having your own date picker, let's say in this example, might bring you down a little bit. Might be like, oh, my app look and feel might not be as consistent per se. But honestly, the users don't really care, especially your MVP users. They just want to pick a date. Like at the very moment when the user needed that functionality, the user goes to pick a date, right? And what's the reason to use your own date picker that's not been tested, rather than using some date picker that's designed by some of those people who have already done user testing and already done like unit tests on that widget itself, and that widget is already robust, right? There's absolutely no reason at all. So in that case, just outsource and outsource that task, and preserve your time. However, I especially wanted to touch on backend. Because I feel like that's where most of the time is wasted. Because if you're working on front end, you're always working on your app, because that's where your users are sort of interacting, always. But backend wise, not always, because you're gonna have so many decisions that you have to make. Let me just give you a few examples. For example, if you're making any app, you're trying to host content, right? Now you're thinking, okay, I need a place to host my images, my static assets. Do I want to use S3 bucket, or like a S3 like bucket thing, like DigitalOcean Spaces? Or do I want to sort of host that somewhere else? Like, because S3 buckets are usually the way to go, right? And then now, you think you'd be like thinking, okay, now I need a CDN. I need to sort of put a CDN in front of that, and as for your server, you might be considering different architectures. You might be like thinking, oh, should I use Firebase? Should I use microservices? Should I use something like AWS Lambda? Should I go serverless? And for databases, you also have considerations. Be like, oh, should I go SQL? Should I go NoSQL? What other database should I have a Redis for caching? What should I use for what other caching strategies should I have? And if you want to make a searching feature functionality, then you might also have to worry, oh, should I just bite the bullet and pay and then to use Algolia, or should I host my own Elasticsearch instance, or should I go for some other pre-made search engine stuff? Same thing goes with real-time, real-time functionalities. And after all that, you might be like, oh, now I have this entire infrastructure, and I want to be able to redeploy this infrastructure, to other places when I need to. So now, how about infrastructure as code? How about Terraform?
Ooh.
And you have so much things that you consider. What if you just have one computer that you host in your bathroom? It's one Mac Mini or whatever. You write your code on there. You save all the images on there. You don't have any CDN. For a search functionality, you literally do a linear search. Let's say you do you do the easiest thing possible. Whatever, linear search might even be harder than if you had a fuzzy search library installed, and you use the easiest language possible. That's or the language that you're familiar with the most. Whatever, JavaScript, Python, whatever. And then as for real time, you outsource it to a Firestore. Let's say use Firestore for real time, and everybody is subscribed to one to their own Firestore document. So this way you get a free real time listener thing, right? Firestore is so cheap if you use it for real time related stuff. I mean, by real time, I really mean just notifying users. But yeah, now you got yourself a solid backend that's gonna send you as long as your bathroom doesn't catch on fire, or your computer there is still fine. I'm not saying you should actually go this way. I'm just saying that what if you did this?
Yeah.
Your app is still gonna work, right?
Yeah. A lot of considerations to make.
Yeah. Sorry, but I've
That's
been
why
ranting a lot.
it's no, that's good. Like you raised a lot of good points. That's why simplicity is and I don't mean simplicity from the backend side, but like feature wise. That's why I think it's good to not like there's some features that might be for your business or your app that are essential, and some that are like kind of essential. If it's kind of essential, then you shouldn't use the word essential. Like it's kind of important, and so there's probably like a spectrum of them, right? I actually think that too many, like having more features doesn't always mean better. Like I think there's like a point of diminishing returns, and then actually I think it almost negatively impacts it. And the example I can think of right now is Instagram, and sort of Facebook itself as well. But like Instagram used to be a place. When Instagram first came out, I was like, why would you ever use Instagram when you can post a picture on Facebook? Feature wise, they both have it. I was like, why would someone post on Instagram as opposed to Facebook? So I've been thinking about this a lot, but Facebook has so many features. Like they have chatting, they have, newsfeed, they have all these like different features that like when Instagram came out, if it's about pictures and for people who want to post good pictures and stuff, then you're going Instagram. You're not going Facebook. Even though Facebook has the capability, it's not like their like main. It was meant to be the main thing, but like it's not their one strength. And now obviously because Facebook owns Instagram, the Facebook effect is happening to Instagram now, where Instagram I feel like has too many features.
I agree.
And so
agree.
As a content creator, like I know if I'm gonna make some content, like a tutorial or whatever, I need to post something. I know what I'm going to Twitter for. I know what if I go post a TikTok, I specifically have to make this vertical video to post on TikTok. When I think about Instagram, what is it now? Is it square photos? Am I posting a story? Am I doing Instagram live? Like it's getting so bloated that the focus of the platform is actually diminishing. And I think over time, right now it's got a good like network effect situation where like a lot of your friends or celebrities that you follow are on there, so that's why it's still, I would say, quote unquote dominantly used. But I think it's going to have the same effect as what Facebook did, where no one really uses Facebook like that anymore. You know what I mean? And I think in a few years Instagram's going to go down the same path of like, it just gets so diluted. It's like, what is this platform even for? And yeah, that's just my thought on having too many features. And more features, I don't think is a good thing necessarily.
Yeah, I was on the Facebook app, and then the app has like 6 tabs like on the bottom. I've never seen so many tabs.
Wait, really? 6? Not even 5?
I think last time I checked was 6. And I thought, whoa! I didn't even know you could put 6 tabs in there. I didn't know that was legal.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never even saw 6. Yeah, that's funny.
That was the last time I checked.
Now with the feature with the feature thing, to use a different company's example, just going back to the Twitch example, like what Twitch is, right? Like the streaming the games. They had like Justin Khan and Emmett and these other guys in the team where like 3 of them were engineers. So they were like very like technically gifted, like very strong in that sense. So you can imagine, live streaming video like that requires a lot of, engineering. And they had a lot of features on there, like chatting features, but the company didn't take off, even though they had all of these features. And Michael Siebel, who was part of the team, who is on the board of one of the partners at Y Combinator, he always talks about this, where the moment that really kind of things started to take off is when they actually started to talk to their users. And one of the users that they were talking to, and I'm sure as well, but it's like StarCraft 2 was like mainly StarCraft 2 was like mainly the the game that made Twitch into what it is. Like right now, you think about
really?
Twitch, it's like it's all gaming.
I
It's
didn't
all
know that.
gaming, right? But back then, like the only reason I know about Twitch and Justin TV is through StarCraft because like people were
Oh.
streaming it.
Who's
And
who's
on
streaming
there,
on
there
there?
was no, just like anyone, like
Oh,
everyone.
okay.
Like I mean, like everyone, like that's where you would go to watch stream, or even if I want to watch like a Korean professional game, it's like I'll go there to watch StarCraft.
Oh, wow.
But and so once like they saw that these gamers were using the platform, they started to talk to these gamers, like their users, of like, oh, what do you think about the product? What do you want and stuff? And they had this like they had so many features already built in, but the one thing that they wanted was the resolution. They just wanted a higher resolution, like HD, because at the moment they didn't have HD, and they were saying how like making it HD actually wasn't that difficult from their perspective because they had already implemented all this other stuff, right? And so it was almost like just a switch of a button type feel. Maybe yeah, you pay more extra money to store it or whatever, but like and then that's what really made it took off. And so that the point I'm trying to make is it's not like that you shouldn't add features, right? It's just like sometimes you'll have this idea in your head of like it should be this feature, you have to have this feature, when the most sort of learning and like feedback you get of like when people actually use it is to actually put the product out there, just bringing it back to the MVP. Make any product, publish it, and it won't be your dream app for sure, but you should be embarrassed by your app. But you give it to a user, and then it's almost like an idea maze. Like you keep like kind of refining, talking to users, and it kind of takes like a natural organic growth. And I think that was really insightful for me, because for the longest time, right, I always thought the idea was really important. Like you gotta, like Uber, like the idea, like it's so, I used to always think that was the genius part. And nowadays I think more, especially after I decided I need to start coding and stuff, I realized like if I had to put a percentage to it, I think it's 10% idea and 90% execution. And I was talking about this the other day, but like even if your idea is not perfect, it's like in the act of executing you discover new things, which is different, and also you discover things almost accidentally. It's like I didn't even with like my habit tracker I've been making, it's like when I coded it up and stuff, and before I put it on my phone, I was like, there's no issues with it, it works fine. I'm just testing it on the simulator, right? I'm like, okay, it's working perfect. But it's different when I put it on my phone and actually use it for a week. I'm like, oh shit, there's this bug or there's this thing, I should change this about it, and you know what I mean? Like that's when you start to really get the ball rolling. And so to anyone listening, this is something that I'm trying to focus on in my own projects and startups and stuff, which is to kind of put that perfectionism aside and focus more on production, like putting it out there and actually just learning from that. If you're, for anyone that's listening, and kind of bringing it back to Flutter. Flutter's the best at this. Like just trying to put some idea to market takes such little time relatively compared to if I was to use something else. And so that's mainly the reason why I'm using Flutter, and Flutter I think is just perfect for that. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on minimum viable product.
That's really good. I feel like I learned a lot from that. It's like it really spoke to me.